set out to revamp the age-long rot and lackluster sectors. I remember sounding a note of caution when I felt that he was taking too many projects at the same time. However, he failed to shake the face of Bayelsa State, sustain the projects, even though the vagaries of the collapse in oil prices and the attendant reductions in monthly allocations impacted adversely on the pace of project execution. His Excellency's immediate execution of an integrated and well-thought-out development plan speaks to his diligent preparation for office. This harks back to the imperative for preparation for office eloquently canvassed by Professor Atahiru Jega in his distinguished lecture yesterday. It also sits squarely with what I said at yesterday's occasion, recalling the advice of President Barack Obama to the Obama Foundation African Leadership Fellows in Johannesburg this week, that they should worry more about what they want to do and worry less about what they want to do. I interacted regularly with His Excellency when he was a member of the House of Representatives and can therefore attest to the fact that he worried greatly about the condition of Bayelsa State then and was doing all he could, even at that time, to ameliorate the situation, no matter how modest. It was therefore not surprising that he hit the ground running when he eventually became the state governor. It is not my intention to list the details of His Excellency's achievements. His Excellency is far better placed to do that. And as is characteristic of politicians, I'm sure that we'll hear a bit of that in his presentation. But suffice it to state that Bayelsa State has undergone tremendous transformation. His Excellency saw the solid state of affairs at the time he took over, not only as a crisis, but as representing both a crisis and an opportunity. He did not waste time agonizing over the crisis, but envisioned a roadmap with defined benchmarks and mobilized all resources towards achieving same, though incrementally. That, in my view, is the hallmark of leadership. And it is what aspiring leaders like you should internalize from his stewardship of Bayelsa State. Beyond His Excellency's impressive achievements in roads, education, health, aviation, etc., which have been generally acknowledged, by far the greatest achievement of Excellency for me is putting in place a system for governance in the state. A system entails processes and procedures for executing governmental functions. This was hitherto absent in the state. His efforts packaged as civil service reforms have elicited protests from interests that have benefited from the previous state of disorder. But leadership requires that appropriate choices, painful as they may be in immediate, short, and even medium terms, be made and implemented for the achievement of long-term beneficial goals. The emplacement of an effective even in contemporary times. It is in this context that I wish to quote Karl Marx, 1852 thus: men make their own history, but they do not make it as they please. They do not make it under self-selected circumstances, but under circumstances existing already, given and transmitted from the past. End of quote. And as S. Protoyo, a notable Nigerian lectured economist, also memorably stated, in the final analysis, we must remember that history does not guarantee anything. It only opens up possibilities which become actualities too strong. End of quote. So in other words, in every leadership position and situation, there are possibilities which you must identify, seize and leverage upon to make an impact, and thus secure for yourself a place in the annals of the organization. Governor Dickson took over at a time of, when there was a sorry state of affairs in the state. He did not harmonize over. The situation was transmitted to him. That's what Karl Marx was saying. So, but you can take two options. You can either see it as a crisis and organize, and say that you met an empty treasury and there's nothing to work with. Or you also see it as an opportunity and seize upon it and leverage upon it to make an impact. And that is what is required of you. This will depend on your visionary capabilities and willingness to make a difference. That is a key takeaway of the Governor Dickson stewardship of Bayelsa State for you. Your Excellency, on behalf of the DDSSS and the ISS faculty, EIMC participants and community, I welcome you. Your Excellency, virtually everyone in this class has heard several of my plan to relocate to Ekiremo upon my retirement. What they do not know is that Your Excellency Your Excellency's declared intention and ongoing efforts to complete a road to Ekiremo by December this year. I am also using this opportunity to declare my intention to host Your Excellency at my home in Ekiremo on the day of the commissioning of the said road by the special guest. I am done. Thank you.
Let me, on this note, respectfully rest on the already established protocol. I would like to begin by expressing my profound appreciation and gratitude to the very capable director who is doing a great job here in a way and in a manner that we know and trust and believe that Bayelsans are capable of doing. A round of applause for you. Thank you for your excellent meritorious services to our country, but also as your governor, I must, on behalf of our people, express our pride in the great work you are doing and for showcasing our state once again, even here, as a state of excellence. Now, my entourage is very heavy, and I want to particularly appreciate my leaders who are here, those on this table with me, and because it's going to be a robust interaction, there are no high tables and low tables. All tables are equal. So those on this side, as well as the other leaders who came with me. And just to add, Ambassador Gale was not just former Secretary to Government of the great state of Bayelsa, just recently retired as a Federal Permanent Secretary too. He's also here, and the security chiefs who are products of this institute, the Commissioner of Police, and the brand new Director of State Security who assumed duties in Bayelsa just about 3 weeks ago. And who is a Bayelsa now, much more than is from Kano. and all of them part of this entourage. Very worthy cause participants. Gentlemen of the press, very distinguished ladies and gentlemen. I want to thank the Director and the Director General of the Department of State Services also for extending this invitation to me. As you have already heard from Director Seyefa, I was meant to have been here to interact with the participants of Course 10 last year, but due to exigencies of duty, I missed that opportunity, which I really wasn't happy about. But Director Seyefa and the Director General kept inviting me and making it clear that I needed to be here to share my views and perspectives. I want to thank Director and the DG for inviting me. But I also want to thank the Director General and Director Seyefa for doing what ordinarily we expect our universities and centers of learning to do. Yesterday, Professor Jega was here, and I listened a little bit to his very incisive remarks when he came here to share his perspectives and experiences with you. And that's the way we should go. And over time, therefore, our expectation is that with the wonderful foundation being laid by Director Seyefa and with the support of the DG, there's no doubt that this institute very soon will be one of the foremost foremost think tanks where people come to hold discussions on very critical issues of national interest. So I want to commend Director Seyefa. I commend all of you, the faculty and participants, and I commend the Director General for the support and the vision. But as a politician of the other side of the aisle, let me also commend the Director and the DG for their candor and openness and for extending invitations to people like us on the other side. And because I recall that my brother and neighbor, the governor of Rivers State, I think, was here sometime last year, I think. And today I'm here. And I remember I was asking, I said, are these guys sure that they really want me to be here? Because one of the things people have come to know about me, which is true, is that Governor Dickson speaks his mind. And I have my own views, some of them very strong views. Some you may agree with, others you may not agree with. And that's life, that's fine. So I thank you for this, promoting this culture of robust debate and interaction. These are the kind of things that advanced societies do, which is why they keep generating great ideas. And I really, really commend the Director General and the Director Seyefa for this. And to finally say in this respect that you have my personal support and you have the support from the government and the good people of Bayelsa State. We need to support this institute. And I've had some preliminary conversations with Director Seyefa, and the government of Bayelsa will make its intentions in that regard known shortly hereafter. Thank you. That was on a light note. Let's go into the fairly serious bit. You have invited me to share perspectives, not to deliver a lecture, because I'm not good at delivering lectures. But I've come here to share my own experiences and perspectives on burning national security issues, what we call contemporary challenges of governance, and to relate same at the later end of my remarks to the humble services and contributions that I and my team are making in Bayelsa. But first, let's be clear, you are the experts. You know what national security means. You know what security entails. And you have several definitions of national security, which I do not believe that I am qualified to lecture you on. But whichever definition that appeals to you, we take the view that national security must encompass the totality of the activities of individuals and institutions and bodies in a country that affect their well-being and stability of that society and that are in alliance or alignment with stated national objectives. And that's how to look at it. Therefore, I would like to begin by taking all of us on a cursory journey, a very short journey. We won't go too far. Let's start from 1998, at the dawn of our present democratic dispensation, when you had several national security challenges. And these security challenges come from time to time. They change in nature and character, and they pop up from one region and one state, and the next time something else comes from another region or another part of our country. But I think the dominant, and all of you from your pedigree that I can see, you've all been in service for quite some time, and so you are fairly conversant with some of the issues I want to refer us to. In 1998, when the military was getting ready to disengage, the Niger Delta was boiling. The Niger Delta was boiling. Far more than it did in the events leading up to the execution of Sarawuwa. We won't go that far. And so, after 1999, when former President Obasanjo took oath of office, one of the first major visits he embarked on was a visit to the heartland of the Niger Delta, to have a personal feel and to interact with the leaders, to know what the challenges were. Not that he didn't have an idea of what was going on, but he wanted to engage. And I think in all of these challenges, and even in politics, engagement is the key. Whether you agree or disagree, we must engage in the national interest. And he visited, interacted with our leaders in Warri, precisely. Interacted with a lot of leaders, old and young. And that informed the reasoning behind the introduction of the bill establishing the Niger Delta Development Commission. And the National Assembly cooperated, the governors worked with him. There were some internal challenges here and there, but those were administrative. The NDDC came into being. But let me make one final statement on the NDDC, because that can take a whole day, a subject matter of research for all of you. That's one institution that has come, or that came with so much promise. One institution whose achievements, quite frankly, are debatable. Highly debatable whether the core objectives informing the creation and establishment of the NDDC have been realized. Government after government, the NDDC is more as a political tool for funding campaigns and jobs for the boys. Anyway, that's a story for another day. And now, from the efforts of Obasanjo, before he handed over the security system, the security situation in the Niger Delta degenerated. And of course, you all know the causes of these challenges we have in the Niger Delta, and we've always had them. from the days of Isaac Boro to Sarawuwa till now. Challenges of lack of development. The very absence of development itself is inimical to national security. Bearing in mind the contributions of that zone to our national pulse. Even as we speak, all the oil terminals are there. And you will be shocked, for those of you who do not know, that even as we speak, 2018, there are no roads taking you to Brass Terminal. No road. No roads taking you to Agge. No roads taking you to Focados and Ogola. No roads taking you to Bonny. No roads. No roads anywhere. And yet, that's where your country, our country, derives over 90% of its revenue. That's where you have your most prized national security strategic investments. So, very often I tell people, development is security, and security itself is development. Because when you have roads opened up, when you have rail lines, when you have all of these done, not only are you creating economic opportunities which have a direct bearing on security, but you are actually also limiting the freedom of access of those who may not want to play by the rules. Last year, the Nigerian Army learned a lesson in a bitter way when they came to launch in Brass, what they call Operation Crocodile Smiles. As they took all their troops to launch a training operation, as they landed in Brass, just as they were landing, some of their boats and crafts capsized. And unfortunately, this country lost, unfortunately, a number of our soldiers. Avoidable if we had a road. And that's why you have those challenges as a result of inaccessibility. So I've talked about the challenge of underdevelopment. The issues there are about underdevelopment, environmental degradation, and exclusion from the industry that is right there in their own terrain, in our own terrain. Very often I've told people everywhere that the systems we have put in place in this country, particularly with respect to the oil industry, ownership laws, and so on and so forth, have stifled people in such a way that there's a lot of bottled up anger. And you all need to know that. You all know that. Because these are realities that inform security or intelligence judgments and assessments. Because you have to understand the cultural inclinations of the people. If you are writing assessments or making projections, there are parts of my state where, for example, the python is held sacred. And if you are talking of security in those type of communities, you must know that. You must know also, not just in our country, but also in some cultures, as they have in India, where cows are sacred. So cultural issues are very important, which we need to bear in mind of. Issues about the Niger Delta, you need to know these developments, about the cultures, about the history even. I'm talking about the Niger Delta. The historical perspectives to resistance need to be borne in mind. Resistance there didn't just start from when we had modern Nigeria. It is not an accident that you hear of Oba-Overamin Ogbaisi from that region, Oba of Benin. confronting, not the Nigerian state, but the British colonialists. It's not an accident that history tells us about Jaja of Opobo confronting the colonial system. It's not an accident that we hear of Nana of Ishekri confronting the colonial people as a result of these economic issues. From that place, from my state of Bayelsa, it's not an accident that you read about the Akasa raid and the exploits of the great King Koko. So you need to have a proper historical understanding of communities and of regions and also of our country as a whole, and then relate it to contemporary developments and challenges. But I was talking about President Obasanjo and challenges that he handled and dealt with. In the course of the elections of 2003, I was then in the opposition. You have heard from my brief bio, and I spent a lot of time in the opposition. So I'm very comfortable in the opposition terrain that I now find myself. Yes. And I was in the opposition in the Alliance for Democracy and then the All Nigeria People's Party. And I know what went on in the Niger Delta. Niger Delta governors at that time all were PDP, as you know, most of us are still. As they were preparing for re-elections, and also at the same time raising the issues of resource control and mobilizing our people, there were some fringe elements that took advantage of all of these legitimate concerns and issues. And some now turned these agitations into thriving criminal enterprises and ventures. So, with the help of some politicians who supported and encouraged for their own benefits, after the elections, you know, and that's why we tell politicians not to arm thugs, not to support criminality. Because supporting and encouraging them is the easy bit. Retrieving and getting them to normalcy after that event is usually the most difficult part. We had a number of those challenges, especially in the core Niger State Delta states of Bayelsa, Rivers, and Delta State. And then these fringe elements, sometimes raising very genuine issues too, created a situation that became a national tragedy. And then we now started hearing of kidnappings, and then pipeline vandalizations and all kinds of things. That was the situation that President Obasanjo and his national security team managed with the governors. As Attorney General then, I also participated in some of these dialogue sessions, at which the president and his entire team sat with leaders, various leaders. And some of them in this hall had to crisscross the creeks, finding solutions, releasing kidnapped expatriates and so on. So a new lexicon entered our national dictionary, the lexicon of kidnapping. And then that gave rise to militancy. Now, it was dealing with that up till 2007 when late President Umaru Yar'Adua came on board. And I think that late President Yar'Adua, may God continue to bless his soul, meant well for our country and meant well also for the Niger Delta region, and had a clear agenda as to what should be done, building on the foundations already laid by his predecessors. And of course, he had a vice president who himself had been governor and who also knew these challenges firsthand. So they came up with the establishment of the Niger Delta Ministry and also an amnesty program. Now, that went on up until his unfortunate death. That's about the Niger Delta. As I said, national security challenges pop up from time to time from various parts of our country. And you guys seated here have been at the forefront of handling these challenges. I left out the bit about the OPC under Obasanjo, the rise of ethnic nationalism in the Southwest, which the government at that time also handled. But the key point I want to make is that while all of this was going on in the Niger Delta, a far more dangerous threat to national security and indeed the survival of our country was now rearing its heads somewhere in Borno in the northeast. And it was when President Yar'Adua was in office that the genie finally left the bottle. When the gentleman who was head of that sect in Borno died or was killed, and then that gave rise to the growth of a more fundamentalist sect that has now come to be known as Boko Haram. National security threats we're talking about. And from that time till now, remember I said we're talking about kidnapping entering our national lexicon from the Niger Delta. Now, a more dangerous threat to national security came from Borno State and thereafter the northeast, known as Boko Haram. And seated here, all of you, about one time or the other, had to confront those challenges at first-line operators. And you know your colleagues, a number of them have paid the supreme price. This country has lost thousands of souls, innocent people. At some point, Abuja itself was under siege. Bombings every weekend in churches and Fridays at mosques. And that's what our country has had to deal with. And from that time till now, we have lost our period of innocence as a country. In those days, you will all agree that when we were growing up, even for people much younger, we didn't envision a Nigeria where bombs will be going up freely as they do now. We didn't imagine that in our own country, not in Afghanistan, that young men and young women will strap themselves and go on suicide missions, killing people, attacking churches and mosques out of a bizarre version of what they term to be their faith. And so in our country, not in Afghanistan, we are all now getting used to it. And now entered President Jonathan. The combination of politics and the resort to the traditional fault lines of our country in playing politics exacerbated that crisis. There was a time that almost every Sunday, the then president had to pace restlessly, waiting for where and when the next bad news will come from. That was it. And again, all of you, with your colleagues in the military, and all of you, worked hard to push back the advancing terrorists. And you recall, even the 2015 election was in danger, at a point even postponed. That's how national security, those are the issues we've had to deal with till now. Now enters President Buhari. With the entry of President Muhammadu Buhari and his team in a campaign anchored on national security, we have clearly seen some successes as far as the Northeast Front is concerned. But contrary to the statements, public statements by the government that Boko Haram has been defeated, from the reports, even the reports 2 days or 3 days or 1 week ago, show clearly that whereas it is true that achievements have been made, nevertheless, Boko Haram is still alive and kicking, not yet defeated. The president and his team are about to confront a myriad of national security challenges as well, as every president should expect. Dealing not just with Boko Haram. Now, as he came in, there was renewed anger and renewed tension and violence in the Niger Delta. This time taking the name of avengers. And only don't know what they were trying to avenge. But he had an avengers that created a major challenge, as a result of which oil production almost stopped, and the country went into a deep recession. The worst recession in over 25, 30 years. But the statistics are that we are now getting slowly out of it. While dealing with that and the recession, you had renewed agitations from the southeast, far stronger than Masob, in the name of IPOB. In the name of IPOB, a separatist group. And all of you have had to deal with that challenge as well. And our nation is also grappling with that challenge. Now, just as that was, the challenges from the southeast were coming under control, our country, once again, this time from the middle belt, we have had what we may call the greatest existential threat to our country since after the Civil War, now taking the shape of killings in the middle belt. Started off initially innocuously, using primordial existing divisions, and sometimes even a legitimate clash. When I say legitimate, I mean that there are scarce resources that people are competing for. So with the environmental situation that we now face, drying up of the Lake Chad and the preponderance of small and light arms in our region and the collapse of failed states, you will expect insurgencies of somewhat. But using the traditional disagreements between farmers and herdsmen, people have now hidden under that to do far more damage to our country. So what is going on in the Middle Belt, starting from Benue, in Agatu, and then other places in Benue, to Taraba, to Adamawa, to Kaduna, and then now recently, Zamfara, and even Sokoto. Ladies and gentlemen, fellow Nigerians, we are not dealing with a case of farmers herdsmen clash anymore. What is going on is far more insidious, and we need to interrogate properly what is going on. I mean, just 2 days ago, you saw what happened, you all heard what has happened in Sokoto, of all places. Just this morning, read about 31 deaths in Zamfara. So who are the farmers and herdsmen in Sokoto? Who are the farmers that are having clashes with herdsmen in Sokoto? Who are the farmers that are clashing with herdsmen in Zamfara? Ladies and gentlemen, we must call a spade for the good of our country. We are dealing with a calculated attack on the country. We are dealing with a well-oiled machinery of violence against innocent Nigerians. We can understand if farmers have a clash with herdsmen, and they have always had these disagreements. As I said, these are historical challenges, competing for scarce national resources, especially now. But what is going on is far more insidious than that. When whole communities are attacked at midnight, which farmlands are they fighting for? When communities are ransacked, displaced, and some of them replaced, what is an issue is something far more insidious than that. I know that there are so many theories flying around, particularly in our polluted type of politics. And that reminds me of the very evil campaign against former President Jonathan when he was trying to grapple with the challenges of insurgency that was attempting to tear away his government. And yet, in the build-up to the last elections, the leaders of the then opposition party, the APC, who are now in government, politicized, unfortunately, these very important national security challenges and played politics with them. And so in those areas worst affected by Boko Haram terror at the time, whereas the federal government and all of you were in the trenches, pushing back the advancing mercenaries. The campaign out there in some areas was that the federal government itself was complicit or did not do or was not prepared to do enough. And now, 3 years, almost, in the life of a new government, you have renewed terror, far more insidious than Boko Haram. You are no longer dealing with a young lady misguided or a fanatic strapping a bomb to blow up a mosque or a church or a bus station. You are now dealing with organized armies attacking innocent communities while they are sleeping and slaughtering men, women, and children. And I remember in Sokoto, the refrain I hear was, "Kill all the men. Let's kill all their men." And so it is normal in our politics, founded on a wrong structure. And I'm going to say a thing or two about the structure and why we are making a case for a restructured Nigeria. In that faulty politics that is constantly exploiting the fault lines of our country, there are so many theories flying around as they were at the time against President Jonathan. All I want to say is that all Nigerians and people of goodwill should show patriotism and let us interrogate these issues properly. But one thing is clear. The federal government led by President Muhammadu Buhari has to take responsibility for stopping these killings. Because the buck, Mr. President, stops at no person's desk but yours. And that is where I come to the issue of law and order and security as the first condition for organizing a society. Security is the first condition for development. So when people ask me, development and security, which one should come first? I say, well, you can't have development without security. And you also can't have security without development. So we need a Nigeria that is safe. And Mr. President and his security team should rise to the occasion. Nigerians are right by calling for protection. They are not wrong. Nigerians are right that the president and his team should do more to protect our people. They are not wrong in doing so. Nigerians expect security chiefs to rise to the occasion and put an end to these endless killings that are spreading now from one state to the other. From Agatu and Benue, now to more communities in Benue, killing in their hundreds. To Plateau now, over, how many? To Kogi, to Southern, to Kaduna, now to Zamfara, and Sokoto, the heart of the caliphate. Peaceful. But has never seen anything like this. If we are under attack by foreign mercenaries, that is the more reason that the security forces of this country and the president as commander-in-chief should lead the security forces and all agencies to repel this foreign attack. Because if these mercenaries are foreign, then it means our nation is under attack. And the first duty of the federal government, of any government at all, is law and order. So I join all Nigerians not just to condemn these killings, but to call for concerted effort at stopping them. We have lost enough innocent blood. And instead of these killings abating, they seem to be spreading. That's why I said, what is going on in the Middle Belt and gradually going around other states and regions of our country is clearly the most potent national security threat, most potent existential threat that our country has faced since after the Civil War. Kidnappings are bad, yes, but kidnappers don't kill hundreds and 200 in their wake. This challenge, we have to stop it. And all political leaders, irrespective of party, should come together to address this. You see, this is what happens when in most civilized, do I say developed, not civilized, nations. When nations are under attack or they face existential challenges, their leaders, military, civil, business, everybody, they rally together to stop it. So once again, I call on our president to lead a national consensus. So how to confront and defeat this creeping terror, and something clearly that is beyond herdsmen-farmers clashes. This is not herdsmen-farmers clashes. Talking of pogroms carried on against innocent people. Now, my dear friends, why I took this route was to let us have an idea of the national security challenges facing our country, of which you are all aware, and to which you have all dedicated your entire careers confronting. National security threats will continue to be there in every nation. Director Silva, thank you for inviting me. Well, first of all, as I stated in my remarks, it is very clear that Nigeria's lopsided federal system, over centralization of security powers, and the politicization of security by the various agencies is a major cause of instability and poses a threat to national stability. I talked about the centralized control and how politicians of parties that control the center seek to play politics with security. I was talking about the politics of insecurity and the insecurity of politics, occasioned by the abuse of Nigeria's federal system and the ease with which those who control powers at the federal level undermine law and order in parts of our country and make it difficult for our citizens to feel safe and to feel protected under the law. That's a major cause of instability and insecurity that we need to address, which is why you tie it to the abuse of the federal system. When you correct it, the governor of Taraba will be in a position to mobilize the security resources of the state. The governor of Sokoto, the governor of Zamfara. I remember the governor of Zamfara said he didn't want to be addressed as a chief security officer. So you can imagine the frustration. And I talked about in my state where with all that I'm doing, there are politicians of the other party in Abuja whose only claim to political leadership is control and abuse of the security forces. They undermine state security, and they do so with impunity. They do so with impunity. They are not challenged. Rather, the federal system listens to them, removes and replaces security people they are not comfortable with, promoting insecurity and instability in states. In states we are laboring hard to bring under security control. The over-politicization of security and Nigeria's lopsided security architecture and over-centralization. That's the cause of instability in this country. That's why we're talking about.
Now, what about the problem that come with state police? People are saying that the state police can also be abused by governors who during election.
Well, first you have to agree that there's an abuse at the federal level, and we shouldn't go into a debate as to which abuse is better than the other. All we are calling for at this stage is for a meeting of minds, so that we can, just as our founding fathers did, craft an appropriate mechanism. Whether it is local government policing, whether it is the community policing, and if it is at whatever level, the mechanisms and controls that we need to institute. But right now, the security architecture is over-centralized and lends itself easily to political interferences. There's no country where, a serious country where, for example, the Inspector General of Police, his appointment and removal is completely at the discretion of the president. You don't do that. Because the Constitution did not make the president commander-in-chief of the police forces. The Constitution makes the president commander-in-chief of the armed forces, but not of the police, not of security and intelligence. For a reason, because those powers are very important and should be exercised from the bottom up. Otherwise, you have lawlessness, and people who have control in Abuja can very well go and do anything and cover it up, and you have a reign of anarchy. That's what some politicians in my state are doing, and have been containing it for all these years. So I know what I'm talking about.